Man trying to trick this woman, but she's a lot smarter than he'd expected. As the man reached over, she stared and took yet another long sip from her drink. It wasn't the first time he'd done this in the course of the night. He seemed like a decent guy, though. She decided she was just paranoid as the music thumped louder and the dizzying lights swirled around her. Her eyes swept through the club looking for her friends. Wait, what was he doing? In the UK, Lily Poles worked at Gulliver's nightclub for the first evening shift from Lincolnshire. As the place began to fill up, she glanced at her watch. 20 minutes more and her shift would officially be over. Her friends would soon arrive, she thought, so she had reason to celebrate. It hadn't been easy working as a server and taking late shifts, but Lily desperately needed the cash. Then, after countless interviews, she was finally offered a position at a large insurance firm as a sales rep. She felt like nothing could get her down that evening, with her new job officially beginning Monday, until he stepped in. The well-groomed man pushed his way towards the front of the bar with a broad smile, making a beeline for Lily. She'd previously seen him hanging around the bar. He asked for his usual rum and coke, but when he skipped the routine chit-chat, he took Lily back and went right out with a phone number request. Lily was speechless. Lily was in a good mood, so she brushed his aggressive advances off gently. She was used to men approaching her in the club, but she had a golden rule through which she chose to live: never mix romance and work. Besides, it was strictly prohibited by their club policy. But the man wouldn't leave it alone. He kept asking, "What's wrong with me?" with every other customer she served. He started to make her feel uneasy. The man finished drinking, but he didn't leave the bar. He hung around to try and catch Lily's attention while she was busy. He was there with that wide grin everywhere she turned. "When do you finish your shift?" he asked her point blank. Lily was excited about the end of her final shift, but blurted out she'd finish in a couple of minutes at Gulliver's nightclub. His eyes lit up. She should have kept her mouth shut. The man sidled up to Lily when she clocked off and insisted on buying her a drink to celebrate, realizing this would be his last chance. "Just one," he pleaded, flashing her a smile. Knowing that once she was out of there, she'd never have to see him again, she thought there was no harm to getting a drink out of tolerating him all night long. She was dead wrong, though. The man asked Lily what she wanted to drink. "Surprise me," she said, hoping that she'd distract him from having a drink just long enough for her friends to arrive. She sent them a message and they replied, running late. Immediately, the man, drinks in hand, appeared next to her again. The grin was somehow wider now. She really should have kept a closer eye on him. She didn't think much of it the first time he accidentally grabbed her beverage instead of his, but the second and third time it happened, she began to get annoyed. Was he doing it on purpose? If he intended to keep both for himself, what was the point of buying her a drink? She messaged her friends again with her drink barely touched, but this time they didn't even reply. Lily was alone. Lily was relieved to see her friends finally walking in with a nervous glance at the door. She stood up and raised her hand so that in the crowd they could easily spot her, but she was more suspicious of him than ever when she looked back down and saw the man had quickly changed her drink again. What was his game? Lily had the perfect excuse to walk away from the uncomfortable situation now. The man has left awkwardly at the bar with no way to get her attention again, as all her girlfriends swarmed around her, exchanging hugs and congratulating her on her new job. She saw him slope off to the bathroom. Now was her chance. The man was about to regret hounding her all night if her gut feelings were right. Lily swapped drinks with the man in one swift movement without no one noticing, even her friends, before moving to a bigger table at the back of the club. When he returned to the bar, she kept an eye on the man. He seemed to be miffed that Lily and her friends were just up and leaving, but he was obviously too nervous about approaching her with all the girls around. She truly thought she'd seen the last of him. She could feel his eyes on her whenever she got up to dance, making her skin crawl, but Lily kept dancing, determined not to let the situation unsettle her and ruin her last night at the club. As best as she could, she avoided his gaze and he was soon lost on the dance floor behind the crowd. She wouldn't be able to avoid him forever, though. Glancing back to the bar in the corner, she suddenly realized that she couldn't see him anymore. She could finally relax. Even in the small hours of the morning, Lily and her friends danced and celebrated. It was a night to remember. The girls stumbled out of the dark club bleary-eyed and into the steep sunrise of the city. But when Lily saw who was on the street, the nervous feeling came rushing back from earlier that evening. There was that creepy man from the bar passing out in a puddle. Lily just stared at him, very aware that if she hadn't had the instinct to act quickly, she could have been in serious trouble right now. It was evident she'd been the target of the man for the night, and she was determined not to let anyone ever do that again. She immediately posted about her Twitter experience. "The same lad robbed my drink twice last night and put something in my glass when he brought me one back," she wrote. "I swapped our glasses when he went to the toilet and later found him laid flat out in a wet puddle," she added. "Thanks for taking one for the team, whoever you are. Rather you than me, hun." It was not long before her post blew up. Lily Poles' story accumulated over 11,000 retweets, 175,000 likes, and hundreds of responses in hours. Many of the people who saw Lily's tweet were appalled that a man was trying to spike her drink, expressing shock and outrage. But there were surprisingly a lot of naysayers also. One user wrote, "Nice story, didn't happen though," while others accused Lily of sharing false information about her ordeal to attract attention. However, these comments were quickly rebutted by Lily's horde of female supporters. "So many men here who don't believe this because they're lucky enough not to live this as a reality regularly," one commented angrily. Similar stories were shared by many. Another woman wrote, "A similar thing happened to me," she continued. "A guy accidentally knocked over my wine a few years back and offered to buy me another. I accepted as I thought he was courteous, but then something felt off, so I left it. In the next bar, I caught him standing in the corner and staring at me." Lily's story brings to light that especially at bars, parties, and nightclubs, it's always important to be careful. Some people unfortunately don't always have good intentions. Don't be a victim, always look after your drinks. But spiking doesn't just happen to women, as another user pointed out. "To all the men saying never happened, my male partner has had his drink roofied at a nightclub before."